important that we define what sustainable business leadership is all about. And that's the direction in which we are heading and why it matters. I think it is critical, particularly at this juncture, to discuss this issue of when a business owner and a management team conduct their work with a concern for the environment, for the community and the society around them, as opposed to just decisions purely made on profit. Sustainable leadership in business has other implications. The ethos that exudes onto the staff and business as a whole, because this in turn has its ripple effect throughout society. And if a company is built on foundations that have sustainability at its heart, then this will shine through a range of elements. In the world of business, changes have happened at a global scale right now. Coming out of this pandemic is what we are all waiting for, the new norm, so to speak. And as interesting as it may be, the new norm has already come into place. And the fact of the matter is that the new norm is divided in essence by the generations. The millennials, the centennials, the Gen Alphas, they have already lapped into it. And they are lapping it up. They are used to it. They are adjusted to it. The rest of us are, in a sense, following suit. And in a way, I think what's critically important is that the last 2 decades in particular have brought some monumental changes. When we began our company, which is about 23 years ago, the world was opening up and it was becoming basically a more friendlier, the boundaries were coming down, international markets were opening up, and that's where e-commerce was thriving. Hence, other companies apart from us, Amazon, Alibaba, Facebook, etc., started around the same period as we did. The last 23 years for us has been a very interesting ride, if I may say that. But the thing that is, I think, critically important to note is that we went through the opening up of all of these markets, and then subsequent to that, the polarization. The various, political changes leading to the trade blocks that are now currently going on. The discussion of the previous group was very interesting to me. Whether it is a question of, RCEP versus, TPP 11 is basically moot, right? The issue, I think, that is fundamentally important, perhaps, if I may just step back a little bit, because I have the advantage of addressing this in terms of creating a platform. I don't think we need to, go too much into sustainability. Simply means that we need to remember that ultimately moving ahead, we need to have, a place at the table, negotiating table, so to speak. Now, as individual countries, the 10 countries of ASEAN cannot take any position on the trade blocks or any of, whether it's RCEP, whether it's TPP 11, or being an influence in China or the US. We are just too much of midgets, so to speak, on the world scale. None of the countries in ASEAN have that kind of economic clout. But when we come together, then ASEAN is indeed an economic bloc by itself, and one that we cannot ignore. 600 million people with the fastest growing middle class in the world, arguably with the fastest growing economies, make us prime in terms of, the best platform for the new millennium. They talk of this being the Chinese millennium. They talk of it being the end of the US millennium or the beginning of the Indian millennium. But let me say to you, people who are coming in to discuss this, if it is the ASEAN millennium, it is us. But the only thing that we need to do is actually recognize that we need to come together. Because together, the purpose of ASEAN, when it came together at that time, was at that point to balance the Cold War and to prevent us being influenced by any particular party. I don't think that purpose has changed very much. In order for us to have a future worth talking about, a sustainable future worth talking about, we need to first stabilize and bring, strength to the negotiating table, to ASEAN in particular. I believe that we cannot, in any sense of the word, forget why we came together and why ASEAN has such a powerful role to play. We have always been at the crossroads of the world, in between, China, India, between the East and West. And we have a very unique role to play if we just knew how to come together. And if the ASEAN nations could actually, bring down the boundaries, create our own trade bloc, as it were. ASEAN itself is a formidable market. And that is something that I think any one of us, being business people here within the 10 nations, would recognize. Now, having said that, we need to be clearly sustainable. So on a more singular note, which is with regards to the companies themselves, sustainable companies themselves, we cannot be profit-driven as we were. The last, millennium was all about profit. Ever since the Wall Street crash, all the way down towards, the advent of this millennium, it's been driven by profit. And the result of that, clearly, we can see in the Facebook debacle that has just recently occurred. Profit, when it's driven by profit, has a challenge that in today's economy, in today's diaspora, in today's, environment, is something that everyone, in all of the various stakeholders are watching, and they are not just watching, so is the millennials, the centennials, and the people who are coming into the workforce and the potential customers, so to speak. So we need to be very clear that I think purpose-driven companies or purpose-led companies we need to live their values. They should use their purpose to inform at the highest levels of decision-making. This value should be continuously referred to in order to guide businesses, not only in their initial response to crisis, but also to recover and thrive post-crisis, as we are doing right now in terms of the pandemic. The pandemic has prompted the demand for purpose-led businesses, I believe, and the spread of this pandemic has made the interrelationships between companies, communities, employers, employees, customers, and other stakeholders glaringly clear. It's working to create a safe environment for everyone, reconfiguring supply chains and providing more sustainable and more generous payment terms to customers, providing products, expertise to the community and to the world at large. In fact, the one thing that COVID-19 has brought to all of us, we need to basically work together in order to survive. We need to basically look past our differences. We have been too focused on looking inward. We have been too focused on the unfortunate developments of the last decade, where we have built more walls than bridges. In terms of the QI group, we may seem rather varied and diverse. The common thread that runs through all our businesses and every entity is a desire to make positive social impact. So when we began way back in '98, we had a slogan. We called it Rhythm. And Rhythm simply stands for RYTHM, Raise Yourself to Help Mankind. Now, at first glance, it may look like a slogan, it might look like, PR, but in actual fact, it's something that has driven our strategy, has driven our marketing, driven our policies, and till today, it is part and parcel of our culture. Now, we have, easily in the region of 30 to 42 offices, depending on how you look at the group, across the world. And that is bringing together somewhere in the region of 30 to 40 different cultures, languages, countries, nationalities. It's a virtual little UN. So within this little environment, microcosm, if you like, we have strived to bring the borders down. We have striven to make us all recognize that ultimately we are one. And how we have done this is by letting our employees work towards building a social partnership, so to speak, to the communities around them. Our employees dedicate hundreds of hours every year towards volunteering in their local communities. We are also a meat-free and plastic-free company. We have banned single-use plastic in our organizations. We are committed to transitioning all products and packaging, merchandising to biodegradable and environmentally friendly materials. So our hotels are eco-friendly, and our upcoming university campus, which is being built right now, will utilize both wind and solar energy. E-commerce has been the base of all our group companies, and in a sense, it has empowered entrepreneurs in developing countries, thereby encouraging micro-entrepreneurship. So in many ways, we have tried in our part to bring together sustainability. Sustainability means partnerships between us and the local communities, at the same time thinking locally while building globally. Fundamentally, the pandemic has shone a light onto how inextricably we are connected to society and how society is connected to business. The enlightened premise of stakeholder capitalism, even the world's largest organizations are not powerful enough to stave off the damage caused by this pandemic. And this shows the flaws in the so-called profits-first strategy. Profits are an outcome, not a purpose, and we cannot protect the business in the face of this or other global disruptions. The trade wars that are going is a case in point. These trade blocks that are out there are case in point. Transitioning to a purpose-led business where all stakeholders are organized around a common set of values that benefit society and all business decisions are guided by those values can make organizations far more resilient, sustainable in the face of all types of disruptions, from local to global. Hence, this has been something that we have experienced, and at this point in time, we feel it's critically important that purpose-driven companies become, the credo of the new millennium, because this is the only way we will be able to merge together with the millennials, centennials, and so on, because they are truly of a different breed. Their understanding of the world and their needs are very different from ours. So in a sense, purpose-driven companies is going to be the bridge that brings us together, and hopefully also bring ASEAN together, because ASEAN can truly, when it works, be the savior of this region. Thank you all very much.